We are live.
Hey, yo. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Everybody is well?
Well,
Okay. Hope all is well. Everyone, please do us a favor and share if you can at this time. We welcome you to another business panel. We're so glad that you could join us this evening on Facebook, YouTube. Well, no more Periscope, but Facebook or YouTube. Just glad you can join us today. We have such an array of individuals that are on tonight that can talk about business, help you, and all those things like that. So, Deacon Harris, can you wear a pair of headsets, please?
Oh, you know what? Let me wait a minute.
Yeah. I'm just gonna mute you so you can put it on. Thanks.
Yeah.
So again, we're so glad everybody can join us this evening. If you're a business owner, you're not a business owner, tune in. Please share this with somebody. We are, of course, going to collect all your questions, go over some great topics, and we hope that God will help us as always as we talk about such an important topic, which is business, which is a lot in Scripture. The most talked about thing in Scripture is salvation, of course. The second one is money and business, how we manage things, our stewardship. All those things are included in the process of succeeding in life, succeeding in your career, and in your business. So again, please share, and of course, let us know where you're tuning in from. Ask your questions. We'll try to get to them as fast as we can. Tonight, we're going over this book called Jesus, CEO, using ancient wisdom for visionary leadership. So we're going to go over this book, and it's going to be good. So we'll introduce everybody, then we'll get started on topic. We'll start from the top up. I'm Pastor Nick, and we'll go Sister Deborah and work our way through.
Okay. I'm Sister Deborah Dickerson.
Ever since she got promoted to like the boss of the universe, she just uses her name now, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's all. I noticed that.
Well, let me try that out. My name is Deborah Dickerson, and I am COO of East West Connection. How's that, Bishop?
There you go.
And Rich, I think you were on mute, Rich, when you were introducing yourself.
Yeah, Reverend Rich, longtime member of Bethany and Executive Vice President for Longevity.
My turn?
And of course, Bishop Evans. Yeah, go ahead, Maya.
Oh, okay. My name is Maya LeBeau, and I am the CEO of MyZ Photography.
and my name is Chef Joe Brown. I am the Executive Chef Culinary Director at Bethany Baptist Church and Harvest Catering.
I'm David Evans. Nice to meet
you. I don't know how to follow that. I'm Jane Ellen Miller. I'm Vice President of IT and Senior Technical Executive for Campus Works.
Cool. Sorry, D. Go ahead. Hold on. Oh, you got to unmute yourself, D. It won't let me do it. That's Deacon Jack Harris, y'all.
I think he's on mute.
He's trying to unmute himself. There you go.
Oh, it's coming.
There you go.
I'm working on it right now. Deacon Jack Harris, owner of Abundant Realty in Jersey, Philly, and we're working in Maryland right now. So pray for it. Pray hard for it.
Cool. All right, good. So that's everybody. So please, again, ask your questions in the comment section. We're trying to help you guys. What does the Bible say about business? And if we're going to interpret Scripture clearly, correctly, everything is interpreted through the lens of Jesus. The whole book is about him. He's seen in every single book. And Jesus teaches us not only how to be a good employer, how to be a good employee by his example. All right. So one of the first things I want us to jump into, which I think is very important, is Jesus's ability to have self-control, self-mastery, his control over himself. It's not that he didn't feel anything. It's not that he wasn't tempted. He just had self-control. Now, he is sinless. We have sin. So we have a little different struggle somewhat. However, one of the fruits of the Spirit is temperance. which is self-control. Now, as a business leader, as someone in business, your entrepreneurship, or even corporate America, how do we master the self-control, the tension of self-control when I want to do good, but evil is always present with me? All right. Uh, Bishop, if we can defer to you first, and then we'll work our way through.
Thank you. I'm so glad to see everybody this evening. And thank you for those that are joining us. And as the crowd grows, I think this is a really important question and an extremely important characteristic for any business leader, and that is self-control. I think the practical way to, after we get past the spiritual reasons and how to apply the spiritual help that the Lord gives us, is this. Most of our communication mistakes are made because we don't take that 2 or 3 seconds to think before we respond, to simply give our minds and the Holy Spirit a chance to help manage our emotions, which will manage our responses, which means we will not have to retrace our steps, walk back what we said, and try to disengage what the people have already taken possession of. So it's really important that we take a few seconds to think before we respond, so that we don't respond defensively, so that we actually don't respond evasively, so that we don't respond out of our emotions, but speak from the truth and the facts. And I believe that will revolutionize most of our business leaders' communication. A lot of times we think being in charge gives us permission to ignore the caution signs as we go through the intersection.
Okay. So the self-control, I would love to hear, I know I'm jumping in the deep end. I would love to hear the ladies on this, because we're not going to sit here and lie and act like y'all's experience is the same as ours, because you have the gender part as well as the racial part. So let's talk about some self-control from y'all's standpoint, and then we'll kind of shuffle it around some more.
Yeah, I can jump in here. So one of the things that I've learned throughout my career as a leader is that people bring their entire lives to work with them. So when an issue should arise with maybe a direct report or even a peer, I always try to take a step back and try and understand where this could be coming from. Instead of having an emotional reaction, just consider the whole person, not just what's the infraction that's happening at the time. And that is how I demonstrate self-control. I'll take a step back. I might think through it for a little bit before I actually respond to the concern is. And actually, I will say, reading this book, and Bishop took me right back to creating a blessing in the workplace. And there were so many principles that you were teaching us from that series that are so applicable to the things that we learned in this book and the way that I personally carry myself as the leader in the workplace.
Yeah, I believe that none of us, and we're in all very different verticals, but we're also in verticals where we are leaders, and then we're leaders as Black people, as men, as women, and in spaces that they're not accustomed to seeing us as leaders. And it's almost even more incumbent upon us that we not only continually strive for that self-mastery or self-control or self-discipline, but taking that step back so that you respond and don't react. Because I think as a whole, we're very passionate people. And so I know initially my response is not the one that I need to lead with, right? So I will actually force myself, as difficult as it is, to sometimes just be quiet for a moment and think about, is that what I really want to say? Is that really what I want to do? And it's something I think, while Jesus had self-mastery, he had mastery of that skill. I think it's something that we have to work on all the time. But you don't get to this level and stay at this level without that, given who our customers are, who our bosses may be, who the other folks are that we interact with, who aren't really ready to see us in the roles that we're in.
Maya, you want to share on that, or you good?
No, I can share. My computer's freezing a little bit, so sorry if
Okay.
there's a delay. But no, I agree 100%. And sometimes it's a difficult predicament to find yourself in, because that first instinct is to react instead of taking the time to stop and reflect and to not contribute to the angst of the situation. And being a leader, people are looking for you to mess up and to step outside of that role. So no, it is really important that you do take the time to slow down, like Sister Dickerson said, to reflect before reacting.
So I'll bring it into everybody else now, is the chapter on the internal anchors, because this all goes together. I believe we treat people the way we treat ourselves. What's in us comes out. So in the internal anchor part is, if I'm steady inside, it's going to be revealed in what I say and what I do. If I'm out of control on the inside, it's going to show up externally also. So let's kind of talk around why character and internal fortitude is so important to success. Because I've found that people think, especially highly gifted people, they think their high gift threshold will overcome their lack of character, not realizing that their lack of character will eventually catch up to and waste the opportunities that the gift can bring. So that internal fortitude, I think, that internal anchor, that steadiness is very important in business. You got to learn, as they say, Jesus taught a steady gospel on a rocky boat, learning how to be calm in rocky situations. So I'll throw that out there. Anybody want to chime in and jump in on that? That'll be a great discussion, because that whole self-mastery and this internal anchor go together.
I think, if I can say something, I think one of the most earth-shaking days in the life of a leader is when he or she discovers that their talents and their gifts will not make them successful by themselves. I really, really believe that if you are a leader and you fail at people, you will eventually fail in whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that a lot of people think of people like they're chess pieces and not like they're human beings, which means they have no empathy or sympathy for those people. And then some of us leaders, we have amnesia. We forget what it's like to be an employee. And employers that forget what it's like to be an employee, I believe, don't make good bosses.
Yeah. Good. Chef, you got to reach yourself, Chef.
Good. Can everybody hear me?
You good? Yep.
It's interesting, Bishop, on what you just said. I remember when I started at Bethany, after being in business for 18 years, the biggest adjustment for me was, number one, I had to slow myself mentally down, because my adrenaline, as being a chef for so many years, was always at top speed. And knowing that I was not working with a full paid staff, I was now managing volunteers. My personality had to change. And I recall one Power of God, we're crazy busy. It was an incident, and Bishop walked up to me, as busy as I was, setting up for 300 people or whatever it was, and looked me right in the face and said, "You all right?" And it told me right then and there that I needed to slow my mental side down in order to adapt to the pace of what I had to teach and get everybody up to speed with me. So, it was a life learning lesson to lead by example, but not only lead by example, but be the example all the time. So, I've come a long way.
Amen.
I think that is in line with the fact that I think part of our job is to motivate, to mentor, to coach those that we employ, those that are working for us, those that are looking towards us as leaders. And that means, it doesn't mean that you're not going to slip up sometimes, but the essence of that character has to be in place so that your self-discipline, how you act, and then your relationships with people are all in alignment. And I think I love this book, Jesus CEO, because it's an easy read and it makes so much sense. But it crystallized thoughts that you had. And you're like, that's it, right? And so you can't have one of those things or two of those things. It's all three. And that's the essence of your character. And I think if you're thinking about folks are trying to I'm to model behavior, which means I'm mentoring, I'm coaching, I'm motivating, then it helps you curb some of those impulses or reactions that we might have had at another time in our life based on the situation that's around us.
I remember on the job I had before I started working here, the boss I had was
How old were you? 8?
5.
I was still in college. I was in college, yeah. I was about almost 20 years old.
You have to think about it.
Right.
You did.
I didn't think about it. I'm like, when did I start here?
I can't remember you not working here.
Right. That was 2004. Yep.
Wow.
So I was 22 when I started. So
Okay.
yeah, that early range, the boss that I had, she was so tense and just when you know the people that walk into a room and you can feel the chaos come in the room when they walk in. That's exactly what it was like. And as a leader, looking back now, I wonder why. I understand now why it felt so out of control in that work environment, because the one that was in charge was bringing that out of control, no self-mastery, demeanor into instability. Thank you, into the environment, and wondered why there was so many problems going on in the job. And I think as a leader, no matter the storm that's on the inside, people shouldn't have to experience our own internal storms. Put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that the storm's not raging. It's just we can't let it out in front of them when they're looking for us to be calm.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're having a problem at home, you can't walk in and hit everybody in the head with a hammer because you're having a hard time
Right.
at home. Yeah.
Yeah.
And conversely, if you're having a hard time on the job, you can't go home and hit everybody in the head with a hammer there. You know, you have to modulate your responses.
Right. Right.
And not transmit your stress to your people, which is counterproductive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they begin to think that you're not reacting at all, when in actuality, you're processing the problem and trying to strategize how you're going to react to it.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
agreed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think as leaders, we have a response. Jane, you talked about mentoring and coaching and all of that. I think as leaders, we also have a responsibility to inspire our teams. And in order to inspire them, they, and encourage them, we have to maintain strength of character at all times, no matter what. That's why they made one of the things that helped me in my career, offices with closed doors, because when it gets to you that way, that's where I need to go, in my office with the door closed, and process it, whether it's through prayer, whether it's through tears, no matter what it is. But that is nothing that I would want to expose to, especially my direct reports. And I just don't want to dwell on direct reports because it's your peers as well. So strength of character, as you said, Bishop, is incredibly important to earn that respect and to inspire others who may be striving to do what you're doing in your career at that particular time.
Yep. So that whole internal anchor piece, and what it really comes down to, from the self-control, the internal anchor, the self-mastery, I think, because one of the chapters that Reverend Rich one discussed was Jesus didn't waste his time judging other people. Now let's clarify judgment. The Bible's not anti-judging. It's talking about how you judge. Because Jesus says, judge not lest ye be judged, but then he qualifies what he's talking about. Lest ye be judged, how are you looking at somebody else when you got your own issues going on? He never said that you wouldn't see what's going on with somebody else. He's just saying don't ignore what's going on in you, which gives you perspective, grace, and mercy when you see the flaws in others, knowing you got something wrong with you. Because in the same chapter, he goes on and says, you know a tree by a fruit that it bears. How else can I tell what kind of tree it is unless I make a decision based off what's presented. So Paul later on says, judge those that are within in Corinthians. So it's not a contradiction because the judge means to make a choice.
Mhm.
So the dilemma is, if I'm internally negative, internally critical to myself, it's guaranteed that I'm going to be externally critical towards everybody else.
Mhm.
So if I'm hard on me, down on me all the time, my own insecurities will show in how I treat people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And as a leader, we have to manage our own insecurities, our own faults. And hear this, make sure we're seeing through a clean filter, not a filter of our own issues. Because usually projection, what we see in others is really a direct reflection of who we are as people.
Yeah.
So I would love to talk about that. Good. Sorry.
I think if you have a negative dominant emotion,
Mhm.
that kind of accelerates you to the day that you find out what you do well
Mm.
is not going to make you a whole WHOLE success.
Yeah.
It's amazing how we live in a culture that celebrates our abilities, not necessarily our abilities to manage people to success. We also celebrate ambition
Mhm.
and not purpose as much as we should. When purpose is inclusive of other people, ambition actually creates casualties as you progress.
Yeah.
So when you got raw ambition working, you're going to leave a trail of people behind you that are injured, that are disheartened, that you have not been a good example for.
Yep.
Because we tend, if we are talent or gift driven, we try to give the impression that a whole person is talent or gift driven.
Mhm.
And one of a leader's responsibilities, I think, is to teach people how to work with other people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
When we fail at that, and sometimes you have whole environments that are tense because the leader, you can't project what you don't possess.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So if you don't have peace in your heart, it's difficult to portray peace to the people that are following. So that's why Jesus could calm the storm. He arose from sleeping and spoke what he possessed. Conversely, the disciples thought they were going to die because they did not possess that peace.
Hmm.
So he's mentoring them, but they are so focused on his gifting and his miracles, they miss his ability to relate.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Reverend Rich, Deacon Jack, y'all want to chime in?
Oh, it's so important, picking up on what Bishop said, to certainly be able to, as a leader, have a very high level of discernment in dealing with people, right? Because yes, you may have very high expectations for yourself, and that's okay. And that's okay. But you have to be able to evaluate, not necessarily judge, but as a leader, evaluate the folks that are around you and develop them or give them those things they need. So like my kids, they're different. So how I deal with one is not the way I deal with the other. Employees are different. So where their gifts may lie, we have to, meet them at their need. But in all of that, as a leader, you sometimes have to make difficult decisions, in terms of, is somebody capable of the task at hand? The rich young ruler, the rich man said he wanted to follow Jesus, and Jesus said, well, go sell all you got and come on. He said, well, he didn't really have it, right? He didn't really have it. He thought he had it, but he didn't have it. Some people think they have it. And as a leader, you have to say, okay, well, let me test it. And if you can do this, cool. But if you can't, it's okay. We're not telling you you're a bad person. It's okay, but you're just not fitted for this at this time, and not be hesitant to make the tough decision when those decisions need to be made, because you have to look at the betterment of the organization and what it is you're trying to do, whether it's at your job, in a relationship, in your family, you have to be able to make those tough decisions sometimes. And I think that's where some of the leaders stumble, because as Christians, we want to do the right thing, and we want to be, we don't want to hurt folks. But sometimes those tough decisions are what allows folks to be all that they can be going into the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
I think one of the subconscious things that we do as leaders, we have to guard. If we have any insecurity in our positions or in our ability to succeed, subconsciously we will give generalized descriptions that are almost instructions that are almost impossible to carry out. And when we give those instructions that are vague, it gives us something to criticize in the people, because every time they try to achieve what they think is the focus of our instruction, we move the goalposts and say that's not what I want. It is a horrible way to try to keep people thinking they're not good enough for the positions that they're in.
Wow.
The issue for us is giving people instructions that fit and challenge their skill set so that they can progress. But, and where do I get that example? Jesus gave the disciples the same glory that God gave him. So he equipped them to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was up to him to develop them, which is why he said, follow me.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave specific instructions, ones they could follow. When we actually don't give specific instructions, it's because we're secretly soothing our own insecurity because we do not want people to succeed.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that I've experienced that before with a leader in my past, and in giving instructions to people, and if they deliver the project to you and it's not what you expected, the first thing I do is look within, and I kind of recap the direction that I gave them. I want to double check myself and make sure I was clear with my instruction. And if I can validate that, then still as a leader, if they didn't hit the mark, as a leader, I still have a responsibility, to what you said, Reverend Rich, to develop them, right? Identify what those gaps are in the skill set, which didn't allow them to meet my expectations. But I think we always have to check ourselves too and make sure that we've given clear instruction before we respond to something that didn't meet our expectations.
Yeah.
And I had a leader once who actually, when I first joined the company that I'm with now, I had a leader and she had nothing positive to say about anyone on the team that I was inheriting. And it was very interesting to me. I'm like, these people can't all be terrible. Right? And if they are that bad, why are they still here? And why are you giving them to me? But what I learned is that that leader had so many insecurities that in order to mask her insecurities, she was stepping on the rest of the team. So you have to be able to assess where a person is really coming from.
Absolutely.
All they're spewing is negativity.
Yeah.
I found these people to be extremely talented, but they weren't empowered and they didn't get the opportunity to showcase what their abilities were.
She was trying to impact the credibility of the team before you got to know the team.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I know better than that.
Yeah.
Wow. Deacon Harris, you gonna say something?
Yeah, am I muted now? What I found, man, in life is, as we begin to learn the word and as we begin to understand Christ and his mission and the power of God, once it has infested us, it gives us an opportunity, in my eyes, to do two things. First, the search within to make sure that we are walking as he would have us to walk. To be a perfect example, I had a situation that took place, I guess, a few weeks ago. And I'm in the real estate industry, and everything goes on in the real estate industry. And I had done a deal. I had helped some people do some things, and there was a couple curves that took place in the process. So I had to first look within myself and say, what took place wasn't absolutely correct, and I need to say something to them about it. Why? Because it bothered my spirit. And here is what the Lord had spoke. He said, before you go and correct somebody else, make sure what? That you are correct. And in that dialogue within myself, here's what happened. I let it relax and I allowed the situation to play itself out, and it came out in a good mean. So what am I saying? I'm saying that, and all of us have said the same thing. God's word inside of us gives us, and especially me, the opportunity to see out of a different light. I guess it was 15, maybe 20 years ago, Bishop said something in his sermon that has never left me. He said, if your light is darkness, then how dark is your darkness? And every time I look at a situation, my question becomes, am I looking at this from a position of light, his light, the truth, or a position of darkness, the world? It has changed my life. That's why every day, every morning, I don't try to study his word. Why? So that I can begin to relate his word to the life word, which is truth and fact. And those two never come out. Truth is always real. Fact always looks real, but it really is false, as we know. Yeah.
So that's good thought. Good thought. So a lot. It kind of goes right into the next discussion, which on Jesus took action, and as a leader, modeling action is more important than dictating it. Jesus did a whole lot of teaching, but when he called his disciples, he said, "Follow me, and you will become." Now, in that following includes teaching, but the primary purpose is fellowship, example, because teaching is not just what I say, teaching is also how I live too. So through Jesus' actions, through him doing, he was teaching his disciples. We've been saying in this prayer series since February. I really don't think that Jesus went away to pray. He went away to pray just to pray, but his disciples found him praying to teach them a lesson that my public power comes from this.
Yes.
But they were missing the lesson. They thought, oh, that's cool, he's praying. No, you should be doing the same thing that I'm doing so you can do the same thing that I'm doing.
Well,
So, go ahead, Bishop, sorry.
It's so easy to get caught up on your ability to do things and not understand that, as a Christian business person, nothing we do will be any stronger than our discipleship. And imagine if we get a hold of that truth, what God would be able to do in the different endeavors that we're involved in.
Absolutely.
But because we're so, I have to see it now, we miss the process of God in that this time that he would go away and pray, or time that he would spend with his father listening to what his father had to say, which is extremely important, impacted publicly how he ran his business. And it's amazing to me, the correlation between prospering in your soul and prospering in your business. It's absolutely amazing to me.
Yep. Anybody else want to chime in on that? I know we loaded up.
I don't know how you chime in behind Bishop, but I'm going to try. There's something that, again, that grabbed me about this book that actually confirmed that if your strong spiritual values are at the core of who you are, then that is how you're going to lead. And this book showed you that Jesus as CEO was really showing you all the ways that you should communicate, motivate. I keep going back to that. Your teams, whether as an entrepreneur or in the corporate world, but that spiritual grounding, that character, those values, if they're not at the core, then you can't and aren't thinking about doing any of this. You miss that whole part of the golden rule of do unto others, right, as you would have to do unto you. And I think that is what lends itself to us being at peace when things are warring around you, at coming at it, again, with a response instead of a reaction, right? And looking that if folks got to do some things to get it done, you're in there getting it done too. Because again, it's about modeling that behavior. And I think all the way through, if you're living a godly life, if you're living a biblical life, then that is going to shape the type of leader that you are. But I think you first have to get at that core of those spiritual values that we hear Bishop talking about, and that gets instilled in who you are as an individual. And that then emanates in who you are as a leader.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Also, in the book, I thought it was really interesting in that particular chapter about he took action. They talked about all the actions that Jesus was taking throughout his life. Even when he was hanging on the cross, he still took action. When he said to John and Mary, "This is now your mother, this is John is your son." And though his work was finished here on earth, John's work and our work was just beginning. So when I think about that in my role as a leader about taking action, I understand that we always have to be evolving. We always have to be looking for that next creative or innovative thing to make an impact, on our business or the company that we're working for, and just be proactive about things. Again, going back to Bishop, you're creating a blessing in the workplace. I remember distinctly you talking about we need to shift from being employees to being consultants.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always something to do, and we can't be too puffed up to do the little things as well. So I really related to the fact that Jesus was taking action up until the time that he left this earth, and we need to model that behavior, as you said, Sister Jane. Continue to model the behavior.
And one of the other things that happened in the book, in that same chapter, Sister, when he talked about him taking action, there were some constants, in his life, particularly his last 3 years. The Sadducees and Pharisees were there, and they were constant, right? And he had to deal with them daily. And the way he dealt with them was not strong-armed, right? He would just ask simple questions and deal with it. And in whatever leadership position you're in, you're always going to have those naysayers. It's not so much that everybody should speak highly of you. The Bible says you got to be careful when everybody does speak highly of you. But when he took action against those things that were a constant force. There's some things in your leadership roles that are going to be constant, but the way you deal with them has to be constant also and consistent. And Jesus was a great example of that. And I know, Bishop and Pastor Nick have dealt with those same things, even in ministry, that are constant. They're not constantly good things. They're constantly things that are challenging, what it is in the vision that God has placed in them. But the consistency of how they deal with those things is an example to us all.
Can I ask a question? Why do you think that leaders have developed a disdain for participating in part of the training for those people that work for them? Because as I look, I'm asking the question, when I look at the example of Jesus, I see him as being an integral part of the disciples' training. What I also see in modern leadership, especially in the church, where top leaders think it's almost beneath them to train the people they depend upon to make their ministry a success. So what do you think in corporate life? I can't remember my CEOs being involved in any, or rarely involved in training the employees that he or she needed to make his company or her company successful. What do you think happened with the disconnect? Because when I had my building maintenance business, my employees spent the first 3 days with them on the job, them watching me, them working with me, and then me watching them. And I didn't turn them loose until they could do those 3 pieces of the training. I didn't turn them loose to do work on their own until they satisfactorily navigated those 3 days with me, or those 3 sessions with me.
I'll be willing to be wrong on this.
Okay.
I think it goes back to the chess pieces versus a human.
Okay.
They're disposable, and I can always find someone else.
Okay.
And I think when they were talking about one of the mortgage companies before the crash in 2008, the CEO had his own elevator up to his office, where he came in the back, never interacted with anybody. So it's easier for him to disconnect, make all the money, fire people at will when I don't have to see any of these people. And I wonder if any of that plays a role in it, where the growing disconnect. We're back in the day when a CEO had a plant, he would walk around the people, meet
Yeah.
everybody, they would know it, and somewhere this thing happened
The
where
disconnect.
the disconnect, the CEO pay went up, and the distance came in.
I think the disconnect comes from insecurity. I think a lot of either CEOs, managers, leaders, at certain times become insecure when they feel as though somebody can do their job. And I think a lot of them step back and hold back what they really want to give you and teach you, and will wait to see if you're going to work as hard as them. And I think there's a big mistake there, from a leadership point of view, because if you're not giving everything to someone who is following you, then you're ultimately doing two jobs.
Yeah. Well, succession planning is so is so paramount to the continued success of it, whether it's a ministry or a corporation or your own business. And it's very short. I don't know the answer to your question, Bishop, but I just know it's short-sighted, right?
Yeah.
Extremely short-sighted, because
Yeah.
succession planning is ensures future success.
Yeah, I think that sometime, if I might add in, if I might chime in, I think that sometime, Bishop, the especially for a person that's never been there before, sometime the growth has a tendency to offset the initial direction that the business was, or the ministry was actually moving in. So now here's a person that is starting to see success, and instead of realizing where the success has come from, they now distance themselves and take a more visual role, if you will, in living the life that they wanted to live, as averse to building the business and or the ministry that they've been able to get and or build. I think a lot of it really, and Chef, I think you're right, as sometimes the ego will take place. Yeah.
Shakira brought up a good statement. She said one of her former supervisors said that she refused to show any of her direct reports all that she knows because she then could be replaced. As a result, performance reviews always reflected not quite ready evaluation. Now, to me, that says more about the inability of the leader the willingness of the leader to grow. Because if I'm a leader and I'm leading you, if I'm constantly growing, constantly moving on, constantly learning new skills, I don't mind teaching you. It's like when you watch the movies where the student tries to fight the teacher, and the teacher's like, "I didn't teach you everything yet," and they whip they behind. It's like you're continuing to grow, where you want people to meet up. Because if you're performing well, then it's not an issue. But I could be wrong. But
No, it shows a certain level of immaturity, right? If somebody
Immaturity and insecurity.
doesn't immaturity and insecurity, if somebody does not want to show, because everybody is replaceable. All of us are replaceable. If we don't think we are, guess what? We will be one day. So it shows a high level of insecurity if you're not able to do that. And you kind of find two types of leaders. You have those leaders that build a team, that's their team, and they keep their team, and that's fine. And you have other leaders that build a team, and as they develop, they send them off to do other things. They say, okay, go. And they get somebody else in and they train them, to do the same thing. Both types of leaders are fine, but anytime you have a leader that is holding back, that's going to backfire at some point. It's going to backfire at some point.
Do you think? Do you think as leaders that we make the job look so easy that we get lazy in the fact that we have to train somebody to work as hard as we have to get where we are? So it seems like a lot of people will look at what I do because I make it look easy. My wife says it all the time. I make it look easy because we're 20, 30 people. And then to teach somebody to do that as easy is hard work. It's hard for me to teach somebody to do that.
Yeah, I've heard that before. And I think, again, it is the responsibility of the leader to invest. in their employees and to groom them and move them along. And yeah, I just think that's part of being a leader. We have to make that investment. Is it hard? Does it, I have some managers who say, oh, I might as well do it myself versus, teach this other person how to do it. Well, no, you need to invest in that person so that they can get there. But I will agree, it takes time and it's a hard job.
I think to add to what everybody's saying, one of the leadership mistakes is that not knowing the difference between trying to develop a person and trying to create one. And many times when we're trying to create one, and hopefully we're trying to duplicate ourselves, we're trying to create an individual that does not have the foundational characteristics that they need to duplicate you. You may have 10 strong characteristics. The person you've chosen may have 5, and we think we can create those 5. But we really have to discern if they have what it takes to develop. And you can spend a lot of years trying to create somebody who doesn't have the chops to do what you want them to do. It's kind of like Abraham taking Lot along on the journey, and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to learn that, because in my life as a leader, I thought everybody was my assignment.
Okay.
Right? and then I learned, how to discern who was and who wasn't. And it lifted such a heavy burden off of my shoulder.
Yeah.
But that's how I approached it in my early years as a leader.
Yeah. What did they say is it's unfair to treat everybody equally?
It really is.
Yeah, it really is.
It is.
It is.
I try to look at folks because we have all different kinds of abilities. And so I look at those who are willing and able. I look at those who are able and not willing. And then those who are willing and maybe aren't able. And they're all different. But I'm always going to lean towards the folks who are willing. So maybe you're not able in this, but there's another role for you here.
Yes.
Right? You're willing and able. We're mentoring, coaching, motivating you all day long. But somebody who is able and not willing, and then you try to turn that type of thinking around. And if a person really doesn't want to, then I think it's our job as leaders to help them find that thing where they're going to be happy. And it may not be in the spot that they're, especially if you have the abilities, but don't have the willingness to do the work. And I've had some folks, I have a team of 170 people, and I've had some folks just assume because we're the same ethnicity or the same gender, that I should cut them a break, right? That I should create a position for them. And having them understand that that's not how it works in life, or these are the roles we have. Now I'll help you get ready for this. I'll pay for your training for this, but you're not just going to go do this, right? And I think that's part of having those hard conversations with folks. And that is part of motivating, mentoring, and coaching. And that doesn't mean that folks always are going to hear what they want to hear.
But that also is a revelation, Jane, of the heart of the individual who's suggesting that you do that.
Yes.
They're asking you to take a gamble with something they can't replace.
That's right. Yep.
And that's your job.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm learning that more and more. The people that aren't responsible when the consequences come have so much to say about what you should or shouldn't do.
Oh yeah.
And they're not going to eat the consequences like you.
No.
They really have nothing to lose on the same level that you do.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
So you have to protect yourself from the very people you're trying to develop.
Absolutely.
I've always said that leaders always want to be a leader until it's time to take the responsibility. And usually they don't want it anymore because there's too much to deal with.
And everybody's not meant to lead, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Bishop and I, when I had the opportunity to serve on the board at Lincoln with him, we had this discussion. Some people were born to lead, and some people desire to lead. And when you desire to lead and you get in a leadership position, it happens real quick that folks can see you're not supposed to be in that role, right? It's just the way it is. And as you're talking about, Sister Jane and Chef, folks want to lead, but they don't want to go through what it takes to lead. And the coach doesn't do what's in the best interest of the coach. The coach does what's best for the team. But you find some leaders that are just doing what's best for them, and that's not true leadership. Whether it's the CEO, whether it's the head of a household, whether it's wherever in ministry, you got to do what's best for the totality of what it is you've been entrusted with, not entitled to, but entrusted with, right?
Absolutely. So listen, we probably go out another 4 minutes because we got to get ready to transition over to the other panel at 8:30. Give people time to get a little break in. But this was a good discussion. I guess we got through pretty quick. Half of it. Maybe we can do this next month and finish it.
That would be great.
And work our way through. So the next one is creating a plan, and that's going to take a little minute to go through. Leading is not based off them being impulsive and going on the whim of how you feel. There's a whole lot of strategic planning going on in leadership. So if there's any final thoughts anybody wants to bring up, any final things based on what we talked about, we got a few minutes before we got to sign off.
I just think the discussion from a kingdom point of view is inviting not as much as the Lord's principles into our businesses, but inviting us to step into kingdom partnership with him and then watch that become evident in whatever endeavor we're involved in. I think it's going to be a phenomenal conversation, not just for us, but for those that are joining us to how the kingdom can come to earth in the form of the businesses that we oversee.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to chime in before we go? Or that's
if I can just say something I've always kind of worked by leading from the 43 years I've been doing this craziness was that I learned that leaders who don't listen are eventually surrounded by people who have nothing to say.
Wow.
And I've learned that from going through some really tough times and being to myself and being to my own special group. And I learned that I had to open my ears up and my eyes. And my wife kind of pushed me through it at a time that was really dark to kind of understand where it was coming from.
Yeah. All right. This has been good. So glad you all can join us this evening. We're going to do part 2 next month in July. Please, everybody, take a quick break. If you have eat your dinner real quick. We'll be back at 8:30 with Meet Your Father panel. It's going to be great. And God bless y'all. Thank you for joining us. And please, again, share this if you can. And see y'all later. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
See everybody.